welcome back to the show. So like I said in the intro, today's guest is someone I've known for quite a while. I've always found to be like really interesting, super inspiring. So with that, Kristen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to see you and be here.
Yeah. It's been a long time. I haven't seen you in person, like, I don't know, 10 years, 15?
Yeah, I would say probably upwards of 15. I mean, the days we used to hang out were 20 plus years ago.
That's so wild. I can't believe this. What has happened? What's happened to life? Okay.
I know. Well, look at us now.
Well, we still look essentially the same and I feel like we're doing good. We're doing good.
Yeah, I feel great. I feel like I aged well.
You know what? Fantastic. I feel good. This has already started off in like a really good. We're complimenting each other, complimenting ourselves. When we think about this show, people come to the show from all sorts of different walks of life. We have people from the corporate world. We have people who are musicians or who are part of the network of the music industry. We have people from the plant-based industry. We have artists, we have politicians, we have athletes. A lot of people check out the show, but they all come here for one reason, and it's because they want to hear about leadership from the unique perspective of whoever is on the show. And, leadership is an interesting thing because you can express leadership in just how you live your life day to day. You could express it in a unique space, like in your workspace, in your community, or in the way that you interact with yourself even. So if you think about leadership, what does that mean for you and how does it play out in your life?
I think that setting a good example has always been really important to me, and kind of be the change you want to see in the world. And I feel, we grew up in music in a very male dominated music scene. And I felt that there were struggles in there as a young woman. And in my career, I faced struggles, for being a young woman. And I kind of just want to carve this path that maybe, lessens that struggle for other young women to come, in the music industry or in business, in leadership, and hopefully make that road, just a little bit easier in any way, shape, or form by, showing them what I've done, good and bad, what can possibly be avoided, or, and then also just kind of changing the way everybody looks at this role of leadership too, and who belongs in it. Mm-hmm. I kind of wanted to shake that up, and especially in my industry, I think I have always been a bit of a wild card.
Totally. That's why I wanted you on the show. So all of that, yes, I love that. Let's get a little bit deeper though, because you're talking about big ideas, which I love. And I like that you started with be the change that you want to see. And then you actually unpack that. You're like, well, and this is what that actually means. But let's talk about what are some of the very specific things that you do to be that change.
Well, I started my firm 7 years ago. And I decided, coming out of these big traditional business management firms where I worked for lots of older white men in suits, that we weren't going to have any of that. And so I advocate hard for strong women. I employ mostly women, actually only have one male employee. And we do amazing work together. And I want to play into their strengths. I want to encourage them to go farther, to really harness what they're passionate about, what they're good at, and hopefully propel them forward in this industry if that's what they want. And just give them more upward mobility than I was afforded. I think that road was a lot harder for me, and I'm hoping to kind of ease that for some of these people.
Your online presence, there's always a lot of conversation about lifting other women up, not just in your industry, just in the world in general, but also in the business world. There's a lot of focus there. There seems to be a big focus on coaching, mentoring, kind of giving people real deal feedback. So is there anyone in your life who really has shown up as a coach or a mentor that was a real game changer for you?
Yeah, I have had strong women around me all my life. My mom she always taught me, to be self-sufficient as much as possible, to be financially independent. She taught me how to do my tax returns by hand when I got my first W-2 when I was 16. She helped me get my first credit card, my first car loan. And then, she co-signed on these things, but then made me pay them every month. So she taught me all of these things and, not to rely on anyone else, and that I really needed to have this independence of my own from a very young age, which I'm extremely fortunate for. My grandmother was incredible, a huge force in my life. And, my grandfather used to say, oh, marry a nice rich man when I was little. And my grandma would pull me aside and be like, don't listen to that crap. She's like, you could be the first female president, which thank God I'm not, but
yeah.
So I had those women in my life. My stepmother is just one of the smartest, hardest working women I've ever known. She started her own firm after coming out of big accounting firms. And I watched her do that in real time. And it was extremely inspiring. So I'm just so lucky that I've had just incredible role models and teachers my whole life.
All right. So a lot of your role models it sounds like all of your role models have been, or mentors have been your immediate family. What about when you're coming up in your career? Have you had any people who just went out of their way to be a mentor, to be a coach to you?
My first boss in business management, I don't know that she went out of her way to do it, or even knows if she did it. She was actually really tough on me. But she did one day, she said, don't get stuck in this position that I'm in. Like, she knew she was at her ceiling at the firm. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you can do more than this. You've got to go higher, and I think she knew my day when I walked in there, and I was like, oh, that corner office looks real nice. I'll take one of those, please. But I think she knew that it was going to be tough for me. And she was really, really hard on me. I mean, extremely tough on my work, down to how I constructed emails. I mean, it was like full on boot camp, but I'm so grateful for that experience because she really made me double, triple check everything that I do, really kind of make sure that I was executing things in the way that I wanted them to be done. When I was asking or communicating things, making sure that I was doing that extremely effectively. So, I mean, kudos to her, Joy Dertiger. Yeah. She was amazing.
Yeah. Well, and that's like one of the things I think about a lot is my bosses that were easy, I liked going to work. My bosses that were hard, I liked working for them.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize it at the time. I think I took some of it for granted until many years later. I just thought she was mean sometimes. So she had a very motherly figure side to her. But I think I didn't appreciate it as I do now. Back then it took a while. Yeah.
Well, I was like, it's almost like our parents, right? Like when we were kids, we're like, screw you, I know better. But then when you're older, you're like, thank God you did that.
I know. My mom and I definitely had our battles when I was younger, but now she's my best friend. So,
well, I had this boss that was like, kind of like the easy boss in my life, and and I loved going to work because I could just be like whatever type of asshole I wanted to be. Like it was like, and at the time I actually liked going to work because it was just hanging out, doing whatever. And when I had my first real boss, I was like, oh shit, this sucks. I hate this. And you're a jerk. Right. Yeah. And the interesting thing was like the bosses afterwards, it wasn't that they were jerks or not jerks. Like, I mean, yes, there were some jerks. Yes, there weren't some jerks. But more so is I didn't like working hard at first because I had this, like my first initial real deal professional career had just been me coasting along working for this guy who wasn't a hard boss.
Oh, okay.
But once I learned the benefit of working hard and how that changed my day to day, I didn't like going to work. I wasn't like, because going to work was no longer hanging out, but I liked working there because I was constantly learning, constantly stretching myself. I was seeing way more success. My intellectually, I was way sharper. And it was that idea, like what you said, like a boot camp. It's like being in that boot camp situation. when you're early on and you're like gasping for breath and you're like, oh, I can't take it. It sucks.
Yeah.
But like when
Right.
you're a few months in and you've hit your stride, then you're like, this is tough. This is hard, but I know it's good for me and I'm starting to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel, you know, the productivity and then the earned respect that came, you know, later as I did that consistently and started to move up and get recognized more. You know, that's when it started to really click for me, you know, that, okay, this does pay off. They say that hard work pays off. It does actually.
Well, from like your unique perspective, if you think about what you know about yourself now that you didn't know about yourself, let's say 10 years ago, what you know about yourself as a person or a professional, what do you know about yourself now as a result of of the journey you've been through with building up your own firm?
Ooh. Get the tough stuff out of the way right away. You know, I've learned the only way out is through. I say this all the time. And I feel like I've got to have a lot of tough conversations with people. And I feel sometimes I got to be tough on my staff. And it's better to just get into it, you know, and just really lay that down as soon as possible, not let it fester and not let it kind of sit behind you, taunting you, because this stuff doesn't go away. You know, it doesn't just disappear on its own. And a lot of times it actually gets worse if you just leave it there. So, you know, and we've seen that in a million different situations in our line of work. And it's just good to face things head on. And I didn't always do that very well. You know, I definitely had some, you know, try to bury my head in the sand moments when I was younger. And those things never worked out. They always come back around to get you.
They always come back. So what's your style of having a tough conversation? So like, let's say, what's your style with having a tough conversation with a client versus having a tough conversation with your staff? Like, how do you do it?
The conversation sucks, but it is what it is. So I've tried to just kind of remove that in my mind of, oh, I'm about to have the tough conversation. Instead, just reframe and be like, I've got to deal with this. I just have to talk about this right now. And I think if you kind of look at it from that perspective, rather than, you know, leading with the gray cloud and just say, this just is something we have to do, and be really solution oriented about it, I think that tends to work a little bit better. Because if you go in there and you're kind of doing the Eeyore dance, like, oh, this is going to be tough. And then you're all just kind of like lamenting about it together. And then I don't know if you're actually dealing with anything, you know, you're just kind of all being sad or bummed out. So it's like, hey, let's go cold, hard facts, black and white details. This is what's going on. And here are some solutions that I've got for this. You know, which route do you want to take? Or do you have any other ideas? How do you want to tackle this?
Yeah. And so like, I agree with you. The more that you've got something just hanging around, the more it's going to be difficult for them, but it's going to be more difficult for you. And just from like a psychological perspective, adding so much more weight, so much more meaning, like forecasting disaster, forecasting success, like a heavy conversation becomes exponentially more heavy the more you hide from it. And it becomes exponentially more difficult to have in a real way because you've added so much false narrative to it the longer you hold on to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's just kind of stewing on it. Yeah. I was listening to another podcast a few months ago, and they were talking about, you know, 3 realities of every situation. You know, it's like your perspective, my perspective, and then this kind of like thought up one that's floating around in the middle, you know, and you got to talk from both sides and see kind of what's really going on. And I just think, yes, acknowledging that, but really not spending too much time in the problem and actually try to just get out of it and focus forward, you know, on the solution. It's just better for everybody.
Oh, totally. So let's talk about your firm. Tell us about, I know we covered this in the intro, but For those who need a little bit more information, tell us about what your firm does, but also I'd love to hear the story of how you started it.
Okay. Yeah. So business management is more or less a fancy title for an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting in that our clients are largely creative people. So, performers and writers, producers, directors. We've worked with athletes um, and they've got this unique way of doing business, especially, somebody who tours or travels a lot, because they're just this little corporation that's, not traditional in the sense of going to work every day, kind of floats all over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that come with that. So, we've got tax situations around the world, often with a lot of our clients. So we've got to deal with those. I think a lot of people don't realize if you're seeing a tour every night in, 30 different states, you've got to file tax returns in all those places, things like that become very nuanced. So, it's pretty specific, but then, we do just a lot of basic adulting as well, paying bills, collecting money, handling insurance, some boring things just because our clients are really busy and their time is generally not best spent doing these little things. So, we try to relieve them of that so they can focus on what they're good at and go be creative and do that work so that we can all enjoy it. And yeah, I just, I love music. I've been so deep in a music scene since I can remember, being very, very young and going to my first shows and, ditching out of high school to go stand outside of a venue in San Francisco so I could like run to the front and don't ditch out of high school, guys. Yeah, not leading by example, as I was
Well, I
saying
think
earlier.
they could Zoom in high school now. They could probably do both at the same
I
time.
know, right? Probably can, just a blurrier background. Yeah, and so it's just something I've always been passionate about. And I played music for a while, and when that didn't really work out, I wasn't sure what to do, and I was finishing school, and my dad and my stepmom are accountants, and they're like, "Hey, it's a great career," and I thought, you know what? Screw it. You're right. I'll just do it, and I'll go be like my parents. I'll throw in the towel and stop being cool, whatever. And I did that, and I did public accounting for a while, and it was as boring as I'm making it out to be for me anyway. I know there's a lot of people that do it. And I just got so lucky at a certain point. I met this woman. She was a headhunter, and she just asked me about what I was into and what my life was like and what my background was. And she was like, musicians and performers and stuff, they need accountants too. And I was like, oh yeah, of course they do. And it just kind of clicked with me. And she got me some interviews, and I got my first business management job. And I walked into that firm, and I knew day one that I was at home. I was like, all right, here we go. I finally figured this whole thing out. I found my place in the world. And yeah, so that's when the hard work began. That's when I went into boot camp, and I worked at some really big firms. I mean, two of the biggest ones that could possibly be. And that was great. It was definitely educational. I got to work for a bunch of different partners. I got to work on massive clients, some of the biggest, coolest stuff in the world, major tours, soaked in as much as I could. And then I started to just kind of explore what it might look like if I did something a little bit different. And I met a partner that I ended up going to work for at a more boutique firm. And he was a mentor for me, definitely, in terms of, what it would look like for me to be a partner at a firm. And I started to kind of build my practice there and started to bring in clients and do that work. And, he encouraged that for me and really wanted that for me. And so at a certain point, I got to a level where I wanted to be a partner, and I was kind of making that a little bit known. But they had a longer term plan for me that I didn't work with my timeline. And so I took off with my clients, and I went off on my own, and the rest is history. And it was wild, and there are moments of me looking back and going like, wow, that was ballsy, but I wouldn't change a second of it. I mean, no, not at all.
All right. So how long have you been on your own now?
7 years. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, lucky 7.
Year 1, you make the leap.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to fight off any lawsuits?
No, I didn't. Actually, when I left, my boss at the time, he said, I just don't want to see you fail. And I was like, wow, that felt like such a low blow for me, knowing who I am and how I operate. And I don't know if that was a scare tactic or if he truly meant that, but I will never forget those words coming out of his mouth, and they lit a fire under me. Yeah, I didn't take anything with me that I didn't bring in. So, yeah, but I have had clients circle back to me now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
Years later.
When I started Cadence, I was working at a bigger firm, and the owner is just a dick. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah.
And I hated working for him, and I knew there was going to be a parting of ways. And when I started Cadence, I didn't really have an intention of starting it that day, but we had a conversation, him and I was like, that's it. I start my own company today. And I'd say 80% of my clients came with me in week 1, and anyone that didn't come with me has come to me over time. And over the years, a bunch more of their clients have come over to me. And the whole key is, it's like, you can have a big name, you can be a big firm, you can be established, but if you suck, or if you're a dick, or if there's something going on where you're too big and you're not providing good service, you will get outmaneuvered. Yeah. And it sounds like you were underestimated.
Absolutely. And you know why? It's because I was a 30-year-old woman covered in tattoos, and they were like, cool, have fun, kid. Yeah, we'll see what you can do. Yeah. Now I have offices in 3 states, and we're coming for the big firms.
Yeah. Well, that's the story. That's the story. That like, we're coming for you, like, because we are. I don't know what you mean by
Siri. Sorry.
Siri, I hope you're on board with us, or we're coming for you next. All right. But that's the truth of it. So let's talk about year 1. What was that like?
Terrifying. I mean, I had enough money, knowing I could be very comfortable for at least 6 to 12 months. If everything went belly up. And that didn't happen, actually. So I'm going to pinch myself, but I had an amazing year 1 and a better year 2 and a better year 3. And every year just keeps getting better. And, we've added clients, we've added staff, and it just keeps getting better. And I feel the hard work pays off. The staying true to yourself pays off. Authenticity pays off. And it just got to stay that course and really believe that all of these things that I've been doing and that I've been sticking to will continue to, reap benefits to me for years and years to come.
So why was it that you had the guts, the courage, the moxie, like whatever it is, to make that leap? Because a lot of people think about it. What is it about you? Is it just something natural about you? Is it something you learned about yourself? Like, is it like, did you just always have this in you? Or is it something that like, you can really say like, no, it's this thing?
I knew, as I said earlier, I knew day 1 I was going to be a partner at a firm. And I've got a couple of friends in the industry who, I've got one friend who's a manager friend of mine, and he's been a benchmarker for me. So kind of watch what he's doing. And when he goes and does stuff, I'm like, oh, all right, me too, buddy. I'm coming with you. Yeah. So, I feel like, yeah, there's kind of like this sense of, well, I won't be left behind from my benchmarking team.
Mm-hmm.
And I, I don't know. I'm not afraid,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want something, I'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will. I'll do whatever I've got to do.
So I loved what you said earlier. We were like, I instantly did a calculation of like, if everything went as terrible as it possibly could, I could survive for 6 to 12 months. Because like
Mm-hmm.
being a small business owner myself, I literally think that way every
Mm-hmm.
year when I'm setting everything up. I'm like, all right, so if the company completely failed today, like how long could we last? And then how long could I last? And like
Mm-hmm.
we're just finishing our 5th year, so we're heading into our 6th year, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got some similarities to your story. Like we're doing quite well. It's growing each year. It's an interesting thing though. Like, why do you think like that? Why do you have that kind of thinking? Like, well, if I suddenly the tap was turned totally off, I could survive this long. Like, what is the benefit of that kind of thinking for you?
Well, my motto is plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
And we do this with our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just kind of lived this way for a while. It's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? And
Mm-hmm.
what can I do to circumvent any of that and plan around it?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go along. And I've found that I've often been pleasantly surprised that the worst doesn't often happen. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
bad things happen, or you get hiccups, bumps in the road. Obviously, the pandemic is actually the worst thing that's ever happened. And we think, God, we're really somewhat prepared for it, probably more than other people were. Yeah, just kind of always keeping that in the back of your mind. You never know what's going to happen in life. Like, you can make a solid plan, but you got to throw it out the window a lot or
Mm-hmm.
just remold it constantly. So I think if you plan for the worst case scenario,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you've done the best you can.
And so something you said a little bit ago, it's like if you stay true to yourself and you stay authentic, like good things are going to happen. It's going to pay off.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what if someone's a dick, or what if they're not good at what they do, but they stay like, because like it's like I agree with you 100%. Like I think people who are built a certain way and have a certain level of talent, if they stay true to themselves, 100% it's going to pay off. That like what you said, I resonate with that hard. But also there's
Yeah,
going
I
to be
bet.
people listening to this who are going to be like, yeah, that's right. But what if they suck at what they do? And what if they're like kind of like not nice people? Like, should they stay
Well,
true to themselves? Like, how do you know if you should stay true to yourself and keep your course? Like, where's a barometer for that?
yeah, I mean, God, well, then you've got to just have some self-awareness. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I know not everybody has that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think I'm probably overly self-aware to the point of like replaying things I've said or situations that I've been in over and over and over in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, what would I have done differently? Or wow, I wish I didn't say that. But I think that's, good learning tool for, what would I do if I get presented with this situation again? Being contrived definitely repels things, or just it attracts the wrong thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger in business management, I thought I needed to be more like these business managers that I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And it just felt really wrong, wearing kind of the business casual stuff, covering my tattoos, not feeding into an entire, lifetime of what makes me me, and
Mm-hmm.
not using that to my advantage. And so I do think that I had some clients that I had that I attracted or I brought in that ended up being a really poor fit because, we're trying to, adapt to each other um, awkwardly, which, just creates tension. And that doesn't work for what we do. I mean, we have really close relationships with our clients. So it's really important that we gel and that we get along and that things kind of coast. And it does take a while to get to that coasting period, but there should be a honeymoon period at the beginning where we're getting to know each other and we're getting, into the nitty gritty as we're getting to that coasting track.
Mm-hmm.
And you've really got to get on, and you've really got to understand each other and respect each other and be able to work together day to day for that to work. And being really transparent about how I work, who I am, what's going on around me, what's going on, in terms of the workflow that we're in. It's benefited me in that I get to that coasting period a lot easier now with clients, because I think we have the right clients because of it.
Well, I really like what you said there, and the way I'd equate it is something that you and I can be really familiar with, is if your band is good or if your band sucks, if your band's talented or if your band is talentless. Like, so, like to say like, yeah, if you believe in yourself and you grind it out, the right things will happen. Well, it's like, well, maybe the right thing is your band breaks up because you suck. Like,
right.
Like it, and I like what you're saying about self-awareness and finding fit, because that's for me, like, so like as a coach, what people expect of themselves or what they want out of themselves isn't always really like, if you're working with them and you're helping with their development, you're like, I don't know if that's going to work for you, or I don't know if it's going to work for you here, or I don't know if it's going to work for you in that way. And some of the work, as a good coach should never be about pumping up someone's tires if they're shooting for something where that is out, like they're lacking self-awareness. So they're trying to shoot for something that's unrealistic. At the same time, you don't want to like crush people's dreams, be like, no, you'll never do that. For me, it's about finding fit. And someone who might want to be like a CEO of a company. Well, yeah, like maybe you don't want to, like maybe you can't be the CEO of this like multinational company, but maybe you could be a CEO of like a really cool startup or like a nice midsize, or maybe of like maybe you can like be the CEO, like quote unquote owner of like a local business. And it's not like, it doesn't have to be one thing, but really understanding fit and how you can be that right version of yourself has so much to do with like the right kind of environment, the right kind of business, and how you're setting yourself in. Just like a band, it's like, yeah, you can grind for sure, but like not everybody gets to be the Beatles. Like the Beatles get to be the Beatles. And then like the tiers down from that, not everybody gets to be like of this level or that level. If you're in it just for the love of music and you love playing, you love honing your art, maybe you just get content of what maybe your version of making it is being a well-regarded local band that plays consistently. And setting those expectations and knowing what environment to play in.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place for everyone. And I truly believe this, right? I believe like there's enough work and there's really enough to go around. Like in the entertainment industry, I was talking to somebody the other day and we were talking about competition in my business. And I'm a competitive person. I'm not going to lie, but I also believe that there's enough work to go around. And also, I'm not for everybody. Not every client is going to come meet with me and be dazzled by me.
Yeah.
They might be like, wow, that one's not my style, but there are a lot that are the right fit for me and that are a right fit for my firm. And then the ones that aren't, they'll go somewhere else where there is somebody for them. There totally is. And, in the entertainment industry, not everybody has to be an A-lister. I've got clients who are, really cool indie artists that do lots of different things. And there's totally a place for them. And they have wildly successful careers that maybe you don't hear about as much because, it's not the razzle dazzle all over the internet and all over the news and stuff, but there's still a place for them, plenty of work and everything to go around. So it's finding where you fit in and really leaning into that and going for it,
Yeah. Like the idea of success, like success can be such like a black and white term. It's like, oh, I want to be like this person. It's like, well, I don't know. Like what about 5 degrees off that person or 10 degrees off that person or that business? And like, something I've learned.
You have things that are like, sorry to interrupt you, but what, not even 5 degrees off a person. What if you want to pull, certain attributes off of a lot of things that inspire you, and be a combination of those things in your own way.
Totally. Like, it's funny what you said. Like you're like, oh, I'm actually kind of a competitive person. I am like, Dave Larson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to always say like, oh, I'm only competitive with myself. I'm not that competitive. And Larson would always like roll his eyes and be like, oh, shut up. Like you're the most competitive. And
Yeah.
I finally come to admit I'm super competitive. But why I would always say I wasn't competitive, because I viewed it only in the terms of the negative traits that I saw in other people, people who were dicks about it and people who like, would like be
Yeah.
like sneaky or shitty. What I've come to
Yeah.
realize is like, I love the race, the chase. I love being in the
Yeah.
battle, and like, I
Yeah.
just like, I love it. But I love having, being surrounded by people who bring out the best in me, where like it's the competition that brings out the best in me and makes me better.
Yeah.
And I hope it does the same for them. So for me, I love to win, but when I lose, I'm not like, "Ugh." I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So like, what's the next thing? Like you keep
Yeah.
going. And I actually love competition.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
healthy.
something, well, it's something I learned about myself, like within like recent years, basically, of just like, stop avoiding things because you're implying a negative trait to it. Why don't you find the good in it? Like, stop avoiding things about yourself because you're worried it has a negative trait. Instead, pursue the positive trait side of that. And that's something I've been working on, is like not holding down pieces of myself, but more like pushing them forward, but trying to find the right side of it rather than fearing the negative side of it.
When you're confident and you push those things forward, it doesn't jive well with everyone. I think I definitely have been, I don't want to say this. I've definitely had moments of, imposter syndrome, or maybe I shouldn't say that, or maybe I don't belong here. And then, even just reading, a bio about myself is so weird. And then I'm like, but I did do all of those things. I actually did. And I do those things, so it's funny when you kind of second guess it. But then on the other hand, if you're, too gung-ho about it, then yeah, people might think you're a dick. So it's kind of like, where's the healthy balance? I think that's tough for all of us.
Well, and one of the things that I know is super important to you is not being like a dick, like not being a jerk. And specific to your industry, like why is that important for me? Like, I know we could say it's important in general, but specific to your industry, why is it important to not like act like that?
Well, it's small, and everything comes back around, and I don't like to burn bridges, and I'm not perfect. I've definitely, stumbled, and I'm willing to admit those things, which is hard. And, there's just also, there's a lot of entitlement. I think there's a change happening really in the industry, but, there's for a long time been a lot of entitlement, and it's tough to deal with, and it's tough to swallow. And I don't see any need for it. I have to have tough conversations all the time, but I think there's ways to navigate those without being mean, without attacking, and again, being solution oriented and trying to find healthy ways forward that work for everybody. Because ultimately, I just want everybody to be comfortable and happy and safe and and secure and all those things. So, if you just keep that in mind, that, that's really where we're at and what we're trying to do. It's like, yeah, we've got all this hard work and we have really, really tough days. We have deadlines that we have to meet constantly. Shit hits the fan sometimes. And we just, you really gotta deal with some situations that are not great for anyone involved, but you got to do it. You just have to do it and find a way forward, and not attack people, when they've kind of fumbled along the way, and instead be like, okay, is this fixable? How are we fixing it? Let's go.
With that, like you're talking about this like hard work, and a thing I do know about you, you are a super hard worker. We've also seen a lot of like talk in the media in a good way of kind of like looking at like a little bit more self-care. And then of course around the Olympics and in other sports as well, we've been seeing like top tier athletes saying like, hey, actually my mental health is being affected and withdrawing from competition. And in some cases that's been celebrated. In other cases it's been like huge, crazy backlash. So what are your thoughts around finding that balance around like, that kind of rise and grind attitude versus like taking care of yourself?
I'm pretty good at it. I've got a solid routine. I know that I need time, me time. So I'm a big morning person. So I get up super early in the morning and totally spend time with myself and my coffee and working out. I'm just trying to get my mind right before I even dive into work. So, I try to lead on a good note. Uh, I posted something this morning that was like the best thing you can do is choose to have a good day. And I had a pretty tough day yesterday, but I ended it by, talking to some family, talking to some friends. I took myself out to dinner and ended it on a high note. And I woke up today and I decided I was going to have a good day, and I wasn't going to let yesterday's tough day dictate today. And it's super important to do, it's we're all going to have tough days, tough situations. And I know that we're all facing them right now, and especially having the last year and a half, but you've got to get your mind right. And, not in a toxic positivity way. It's like, yeah, if things suck, then that you're okay to wallow in that for a bit, but you just can't let it be all consuming for too long. It's tough sometimes, when stuff goes wrong at work, or, something happens with one of my clients, or one of my clients is pissed off at me or somebody in my office. That wrecks me. I mean, and I bet they don't even realize that, because people often just think about themselves. But, that is so hard on me, and I'm so hard on myself. It just, I mean, I can spiral. I can really get in my own head about it, and it can really bum me out. And so I've got to try really hard to remember the good parts, and deal with the bad parts and fix any situation that I might be involved in if it goes that way, or, have the tough conversation, but also not to let it get in the way of all of the good things too.
Totally. 100%. And that, like, I feel you when we have a client issue, I get like pukey, like my stomach gets
too.
like, I get sick of my stomach, and I can beat up on myself and be like, oh, you're so stupid. Why'd you let that thing happen?
Yep.
And it's hard. It's really hard to pull myself out. And I'm only good at pulling myself out of it when my self-care is like right up there.
Totally.
Could I share something I've been thinking about a lot lately?
Yeah.
So, like, there's this, again, and I only mean this in a good way. There's like a lot of talk, like, let's normalize this, let's normalize that. And that's great. Like, I'm totally into it. Like, there's a lot of stuff, positive changes that I'd like to see normalized. And one of the things that's been coming up a lot is like, let's normalize, like not being toxic about rise and grind, or like, let's normalize like self-care and working hard. One of the things, though, that I think is super important, I've been struggling with how to phrase this. It's like, let's think about these elite athletes. Well, yeah, like, because they're elite athletes. Like, I think that's incredible that they're saying, hey, no, my mental health, like, I can't do this. That is, like, I think one of the healthiest, most wonderful, powerful things. And they've worked their butts off to get into those positions, like, and if anyone on the planet should have the right to do that, they should have the right to do that.
Yeah.
And I certainly think everyone should have the right to do that 100%. But working, like, if you want to slot yourself into a job and just kind of have a nice life, a nice, comfortable life, for sure.
Yeah.
No problem. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to build something, if you want to build something of your own, or be part of building something, that is going to be hard ass work. You're going to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. And there is I hate that term, like, rise and grind, but I'm up at five every single morning. And I work late, and I have a super dedicated team of people around me who, like, help me, like, get through it, because there's no way I could do it by myself. And it's hard. It's really hard. So while I think, like, self-care and taking a pause on all those things are, like, 100% important to be talking about, I also think it's kind of equally important to talk about, like, the discipline of hard work and why it matters. And I think both of those things should exist in common conversation, that, like, this, like, intensity of work isn't a bad thing. It's actually, if you're building something you're passionate about, it's a necessity, as also as taking care of yourself.
Yeah. I really can't often do I need a mental health day. I mean, I just have too much to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's the time investment. I really have to work all day, every day. I have so much to do, but I like what I do. So I'm happy to do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I get to do what I do,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's fine. And don't get me wrong. I've definitely, told my assistant, like, hey, I'm going to go walk the dog. Like, I'm just having a really tough morning and I'm going to go take a walk and just kind of get outside, get some fresh air, reset my brain, move my body. When I'm frustrated, I like to move my body and then come back and go, okay, now I'm going to deal with this, head on. You've got to take care of yourself. I believe in taking care of your health. We've got one body, you got to be nice to it. And I think that your physical well-being is, it flows into everything else in your life. That is important. And I do make those things priority, but also my work, my business is everything. I mean, I really, it's my life. It's everything I've worked for so many years. So of course I'm going to rise and grind and do it all, to the best of my ability.
Totally. And both can be true. You can work your ass off and you can strive to take care of yourself. And I think what we saw at the Olympics, and then also, of course, what we've seen from other top tier athletes is just like, yeah, that's cool. That's an incredibly powerful thing to do. Good for you. And these are people who have been spent their lives rising and grinding. So yeah, of course they're going to do that. So I think both conversations matter. I think the idea that working super hard is toxic is a bad idea to get out there, because if you're working super, super hard for someone who is in an industry that treats you poorly, then yeah, I think that's terrible. But working super hard actually can be a wonderful experience if your focus is on something that matters to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's extremely gratifying. Totally. Getting stuff done. And, when we're accomplishing tasks and getting it done and doing a good job and being appreciated for it, and our clients are happy and everything's going off without a hitch, then yeah, it feels great. There's nothing better, really.
It feels so good. All right, let's hit on a couple other questions I got to ask you though. So okay. You and I are talking small firm stuff, and your firm is certainly growing. So small firm is kind of a wavy term here, but
or boutique.
Yeah, boutique. I like that. I like that. So what is it about big firms that didn't really click with you? And why are they so, it's really hard for them to turn the ship and adapt. So why is that from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, we're deep down, I'm just an old punk rock kid from the Bay Area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I feel like that DIY ethic, it lives in me. It's just who I have been for, 30 years. So, that, I think that's always just been, important to just, I feel like I have to know how to do it all and how to do it myself so that I can lead others to do it and kind of show the way. And the big firms for me, obviously, that aesthetic, being corporate, goes kind of against all of those things for the most part. Even working in entertainment, there's still totally corporate aspects of those big companies that, kind of ruffled my feathers a little bit. Dress codes, which I think are crazy. And yeah, the adaptation of the way that we've started to work and communicate and be efficient over the last even 10 years has changed pretty drastically. And it's a lot harder to implement those things into something that's been running for decades. Change is a lot harder. And being a smaller firm, we can be more nimble. We can adapt new technologies, new systems, new protocols that make more sense and make us better and more efficient a lot easier. And I never want to lose that. I think it makes us cutting edge.
Yeah. I love that. And if the pandemic has shown anything, I was never happier to be leading a small company rather than a big company during the pandemic. Because I was we could all just change this today. Whereas if it was a big company, it's like, oh God, how are we going to change this?
Right. Yeah. Well, we had already been working toward a like work remote 1 or 2 days a week kind of thought process, which is something I've been thinking about for years.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a cloud-based, somewhat remote setup already going on when this hit. So it was kind of like, take your stuff home. We'll figure this out. And I am so grateful that we had already been kind of thinking that way for so long, because I do think that shift was not nearly as abrupt for us as it was for other firms.
Like 100%. Like on our side, we had only ever worked remote. Like we have a shared space that we use in Vancouver, but beyond that, like we all worked remote.
Nice.
A lot of our stuff was like all like figuring out how to do some of our stuff online that we did in person, but it was like within 3 months, I was like, oh, this is fine. It's actually cool. And that small business flexibility, like, I don't know. It's like, I like what you said. It's like kind of the DIY punk in me is like, yeah, that's it. Like we can move. As we're moving towards wrapping up, I got 3 questions for you.
Okay.
So I know you are passionate about what you do. And you're also passionate, as you said earlier, about like clearing the way for other women coming up in business in general, but also in your industry specifically. What's a change that you think realistically could be made that would like create a change in the next like 2 to 5 years? Something that we could tackle now.
Equal pay.
Mm.
I mean, if you're an employer, it is your duty to equal pay all of your staff. It is, regardless of their gender or sexuality or anything. And I'm not talking about discrimination. I mean, I guess it is a form of pay discrimination, but it's your responsibility to do better and to, make sure that if you've got a man and a woman doing the same job, that they better be getting the same benefits, the same pay, same flexibility, same respect, as anyone else. We're seeing more of it because people are being more vocal about it, and people in positions of power, people, A-list stars are starting to talk about what they got paid for certain projects, and finding out, that their male counterparts are getting paid more. So it's good because it's, challenging some of these big companies, but, for all of us as business owners, that's something that we can easily do. And the more of us do it, then it will start to, unfold itself. So I encourage you, if you run a business, to look at your salaries and make sure that everyone is getting paid equally and fairly.
Could I share a brief anecdote with you on that?
Yeah.
So we tried to do an episode that was on this specifically, and we had 2 professionals on here, and we actually could never finish the episode because the people we were speaking with were like, this could haunt our careers if we talk about this. And it was such and they were right. And it also made me realize it's like, whoa, I am woefully unprepared to have these kinds of conversations. Cause it's like what you said, you said it so clearly, and just so like, when you said it, I was like, hell yeah. And then I always go back to this conversation. It's like, part of why this isn't happening is because people are afraid to like screw up their lives or like they think like it will screw up my life or screw up my career if I stand up. And so the people who stood up, it's like hugely courageous because they're kind of taking a huge risk there. And for everyone who doesn't stand up on this, it's like you're kind of leaving them out hanging, like because like this is still a real thing now that's happening, and it's not change. It seems like it should be able to change like that. Like I remember hearing about this as a kid and being outraged, and here I am, I'm like 47, and it's still a thing. How is that possible?
Yeah. I know. And today's Women's Equality Day, so stand up. I mean, I know.
Who knew? What timing?
I know I got passed. I know, right? I know that I got passed up for promotions. I know that I was underpaid in jobs. I know that there are jobs that, people at firms I used to work for have that they don't deserve. Mm-hmm. They know who they are.
Well, and the thing is, they do know who they are, or maybe they don't. That's the weird thing.
And maybe they don't. Maybe they are not self-aware enough to know that, but I'd like to think that somewhere in there they do. And right. I mean, I know some of my bosses, my past bosses, I know some of them know that they really missed the boat with me. Mm-hmm. I know they do.
Of course. I mean, your success is like unquestionable. And like, there's nothing better than like doing something super cool afterwards for people to be like, oh, I miscalculated that. I underestimated that person. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to this though. Like, cause like very often it's on people who are being underpaid to like kind of like raise the flag and do the push. And that sucks. Yeah. That's like, why do people have to do all this labor who are already being affected here? So like, do you have like one or two practical things you think bosses could do to ensure that outside of just being like, I'm going to pay everyone equally? Like what are one or two things that you think people could do?
There's a lot of this women-owned business labeling going on. I'm in Nashville right now, and they have like stickers on the door when it's a woman-owned business. I love that. And, I always lead with that, we're woman-powered. But I think there also can be some sort of, we're equal pay advocates. And when you're advertising for positions or you're hiring, you can use that language in your advertisement. So, and I think that will become more attractive to people who are job seeking, right? Saying, oh, good. I like knowing that I'm going to go into this conversation of taking a new position, of negotiating my new salary, of doing all of these things with somebody who already, has made a statement that they're open to that conversation and that, they're, doing their best to be honest and true to that. Yeah, we should got to talk about it more. It should be up front.
That is so sick. Like I'm going to tell you, I've never actually heard of someone doing that before, but like putting that in a job listing, like we're equal pay advocates. That's something that like I think is a really simple, smart thing to do to set the stage for the right kind of conversation when you're bringing someone on.
Science.
No, it's not. But that's like so much of this stuff is like, I mean, how could I have like, I remember as a little kid. So like my mom was the breadwinner of our family. And when I heard about like a pay inequality, I was like outraged. And I was like young, but like here I am 40 years later and it's still a thing. And it's like, it seems so simple, but like, why is it so complex? So yeah, it shouldn't be rocket science. It should be things like this. But so much of that work seems to, again, fall on people who are being underpaid rather than the people who are in positions of power. So I think that was an incredible, simple thing that someone could put into play that is a really, really good start. So thank you. Okay, second question.
Yeah.
This one's way harder. I hope you're ready for this one.
Okay.
All right. Now listen, I'm not going to hold you to this. It could change tomorrow. It could change later on today. It could change a month from now. You're not being held to this.
Okay.
Top 3 Bay Area punk records.
Oh, God. Oh, no. I'm just going to like list a bunch of like AFI albums. Gosh, I remember listening to like Answer That and Stay Fashionable. Jawbreaker, Dear You, obviously, classic.
You can only pick 3. Only pick 3.
That's a tough one. My goodness. That third one. I don't know. I mean, fuck man. AFI was everything to me when I was a kid in like middle school and high school. And I could just like listen to all of it forever. I can't answer that.
So we got Answer That and Stay Fashionable from AFI. We got Dear You from Jawbreaker. And then we got the third one. I don't know, man. I can't answer that.
Right. I'm like, I have so many things swimming through my head that I can't land on one. I mean, honestly, I feel like if I would just pick an entire discography of probably AFI and Jawbreaker, because it's probably what I listened to like a crazy person when I was a kid. I mean, that's probably all, like most of what I listen to. No, I drove my mom crazy. Not a Bay Area band, but Lifetime. I know I drove my mother absolutely insane with that band. So much so that she bought me a Lifetime tattoo for my 21st birthday.
Ah, that's so nice. All right. Final question.
Okay.
Final question. Any advice that you want to share for any of our listeners? Remember, we've got people who come from all sorts of different walks of life. If you're thinking about leadership, any advice that you want to share with our audience about how they can show up as leaders in their own or in the lives of other people?
I mean, remember that the other person on the other side of whatever transaction or situation that you're in is also a person that has a whole load of whatever behind them, and just try and be better to each other, you know. So nothing's one-sided. We're not alone. We're not an island. I think, you know, we can all stand to think about the person on the other side a little bit more. You know, we get really wrapped up in ourselves, and I get it. We all have a lot of stuff, but you know, so does the other person across the aisle.
Heck yeah. I think that's wonderfully said. All right. Kristen, this is a huge honor having you on here again. Like, I was super psyched to have you on here. I was thinking of like, oh, who do I want to have on? And instantly I was like, I gotta have Kristen on. And
I'm so glad. Thank you.
Yeah, no, did not disappoint. So with that, any last words as we're signing off?
No, you know, we've got a long way to go, but if there are ladies out there listening, keep fighting the good fight.
Heck yeah. Awesome. All right, everyone. We will see you in the outro. And Spencer, drop the beat.